In football, we see many different types of players. Most footballers fall into different categories due to their personality and attributes on the field that make them the player that they are. It's a part of the game. A category of footballers I'm looking at today are workhorses. The beauty of it, the importance of it, the definition of it, the effectiveness of it, all things workhorses. Workhorses are overlooked, underappreciated, but the quality and value that they all hold is undeniable. So let's all take a good hard look at that and swing straight into things. Let's start off establishing what is a workhorse. Let's define it. A workhorse is a player known for consistently putting in a lot of hard work and effort, often covering a lot of ground and contributing to both defence and attack, regardless of their position or natural talent. The player will demonstrate and execute a lot of running, chasing and contribution to play in possession and out of possession. To identify or to become a workhorse, there are these key qualities: endless running and tireless work rates, versatility and all-round balance, standard understanding and awareness, and lastly, selflessness. Workhorses can differ and they can vary all over the pitch. You can have a workhorse defender, fullback, midfielder, winger and even striker. It doesn't matter where you play. If you follow those components and philosophy that I just listed, then guess what? You're a workhorse, an engine and a hustler. But why are they so important in football? As we've identified, a workhorse is somebody who just doesn't stop running. They will run through a brick wall to graft and get back for their team and be where they need to be. It's a player typically with a lot of energy, not so much natural talent, but also a lot of selflessness. This is a very important component to any team. You always need a player like this, and it's why those players are always picked. Let's label some: Lewis, Cook, Mark Noble, Ngolo Kante, Ryan Yates, Gana Gueye, Jake Livermore and James Milner. There's plenty more of course, but these group of players are all in a very similar position, all around the defensive midfield, but due to their hard-working commitments they can fill in pretty much everywhere. Most importantly, they are selfless in their role. This allows for those around them to flourish, whilst they sit back and let the more naturally talented players to go forward and work their magic for the team. And when that piece of play breaks up too and they lose the ball, it's that workhorse who will cover the ground with determination and sustain the counter-attack. Commonly, a lot of these players are midfielders. This is because midfielders are the most versatile players on the pitch, due to the fact that they cover all areas going forward and back defending. But that's not to say that these workhorses only exist in defensive midfield. You have more attacking minded and wider players such as Joelinton, Conor Gallagher, Marc Albrighton, Liam Delap, Scott McTominay, etc, etc. On the ball, they are typically great at carrying the ball forwards, which is helpful when beating players 1v1, taking that ball from deep and then bringing it towards the opposition penalty box single-handedly. Their body strength, energy and build makes them such a difficult player in this aspect, because if you're an opposition player looking at the opponent's team sheet before a match, let's say you're coming up against Newcastle, your eyes are immediately drawn to the likes of Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Anthony Gordon in tough opponents, and not the likes of Joelinton, Dan Burn and Sandro Tonali, until they bulldoze you face first into the St James's turf. These players aren't anticipated as much as the most difficult battles, but they are, arguably more than the star players. Those Lewis Cooks, Valverde's, John McGinn's in the midfield, physically when carrying the ball forwards can overpower a team so easily, especially two of them in a pivot together, and tactically this can have quite the impact. With their energy and power with the ball, they can drag opponents away from their star players, who when of course get the ball can win you the game. But of course that piece of play isn't possible without that workhorse. And to add to the same point, teams may be so gravitated by those star names that they forget the likes of Scott McTominay, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Conor Gallagher are attacking you too. Typically for these players as well, their ability ability on the ball is highly disrespected. Of course, the contribution is more off the ball, which I'll get into, but they aren't useless. The whole point of these players and why they play is that they excel in pretty much everywhere you put them. They're reliable and do a great job and have an open attitude to wherever they play or wherever they get the ball. They'll do anything as long as they're on the football pitch. They're not fussy. If you look at the players I've mentioned too, they've all experienced high scrutiny from their own fan base. Scott McTominay and Conor Gallagher were hounded by United and Chelsea fans. Ryan Yates has long suffered criticism from Forest fans over doubts of being good enough. Decore for his inconsistency on the ball. But even when they are not so glamorous in form with the ball at their feet, off the ball they will never let you down. And that's why managers always pick them. They win them football matches, they trust them, they count on them, and it gives them a nice range in where to play them tactically. Off the ball, these type of players are relentless. Out of possession, they will never stop chasing, covering every blade of grass. With their fine athleticism and attitude, they'll also keep the team together. You can utilise them pressing high aggressively, but also sitting off. They can save them on the counter-attack when they look exposed. They can handle the opposition star player. They can do and are willing to do pretty much anything. The dirty work, the ugly in games. If you pair that attitude with a top quality manager who connects with them well, then as a result you have James Milner. Klopp loves Milner. He admitted in an interview that without Milner, none of Liverpool's success would have happened. Managers love these players. Unai Emery is a big fan of John McGinn, labelling him as a good example for other players. Eddie Howe loves Joelinton, highlighting when he was back from injury his clear contribution to the team and his pleasure at having him back. Diego Simeone loves Conor Gallagher, as seen by his celebration and admiration for his two strong tackles at the very end of the game for Atletico, and also mentioning that this type of player makes a team better. Now that is concrete evidence that top teams need these type of players. But to further add, once these players gain the respect from their opponents, they all become their toughest ever opponents. Jack Grealish, Phil Foden, Ilkay Gundogan, Bukayo Saka and probably a lot more said that Ngolo Kante was their toughest ever opponent. Bruno Fernandes said that Declan Rice was his. John Obi Mikel, Frank Lampard and Cesc Fabregas all labelled Steven Gerrard as theirs. Those players are real workhorses and the type of players who sustain and handle the star names. And there's different ways that this can be done, of course. You have, for one, the ones who can keep up with those players in speed and have the ability to completely match them, Ngolo Kante being a fine example. But quite commonly, a lot of these players aren't that fast, and without their workhorse mentality, they're pretty average, which means technically they're going to struggle to win 1v1 battles. So they have to result in a physical fight, either smashing their body or foot right into the man and ball or fouling them. And this is a real test for those star players. Can you handle Ryan Yates shin kicking you on a sunny Saturday afternoon at the City ground? Can you handle Joelinton barging you to the deck off the ball? It's a psychological test as much as a physical and footballing test. It puts a lot of those players off, as it's rare typically for the tricky dribblers to be able to compete and shake off those duels, which is why it's done. It slows down a game, frustrates the opponent and opposition, and also stops the opponents. That's the aim. If you're not as good as them, then you need to find a way to stop them. So fouling them isn't a bad way to go about it. This can of course lead to a lot of yellow cards and even red cards, which is why they need awareness and a clever head, else you're just running around like a headless chicken. These are all reasons as to why they are so valued and effective, but there's even more to add. Firstly, a lot of teams today do a lot of running. If you look at the high pressing teams like Bournemouth, Brighton, Newcastle, even Arsenal, there's workhorses there, mainly because they need them there. High pressing contains a lot of chasing forward and back and all over the pitch, whilst also needing players to be aggressive in those duels. If you look at more teams, they're very attacking, and that demands a lot of running. Why do you think Liverpool, all those years, could bomb Trent, Robertson, Salah, Mane, Firmino, Wijnaldum, all forward to attack? because of those top level athletes like Jordan Henderson and James Milner, who could selflessly cover for them, protect them. It's truly the foundation to winning sides, and a huge foundation to their whole game is, as I've mentioned so many times, the unselfish mindset that their skill set entirely roots from. That leads to leadership. The role they play is a demanding mindset of looking out for others constantly in that space left behind and covering absolutely everywhere, doing the dirty work. So naturally, it manufactures a quality leader, a communicator, a good figure within the dressing room that sets an example for everyone else within the squad. And as we all know, you need leaders and quality dressing room figures to bring success and trophies to a team, labelling another reason why managers love these players so much. Some of these players are hated, some of these players are adored, but they are never ignored. Thank you for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, then make sure to smash a like and subscribe to the channel. This was a different type of video today, so let me know in the comments if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.